Should be live now. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Extra Hours, part of the Office Hours Global network. If you want to find out more, officehours.global is where you go to, and you want to sign up and get emails about what we're doing every day. We meet every day. We've already met today. We met at 7 a.m. Pacific, and here we are at 6 p.m. Pacific, which is a comfortable 11:30 a.m. here in Adelaide, Australia. Tonight we have a panel, there's 4 of us, and it really is a tale of 2 cities. We have, here I am in Adelaide, South Australia, and just down the road is Carl Asmussen. Hello, Carl.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the future.
That's right. We're even further into the future now. As of Sunday, daylight saving, we pushed an extra hour into the future. Which is what makes the 7 a.m. Pacific daily meeting of office hours very uncomfortable, because that becomes a 12:30.
It's about to get even more uncomfortable, of course, because the US is about to start their daylight savings, which will push us 2 hours out.
That's right. Yeah, it's currently 12:30 a.m. Then it'll go to 1:30 a.m. So that's a bit rough, which is why we have this nice, comfortable evening in the States time slot. So the tale of 2 cities is Adelaide is one of them, and the other is Seattle, Washington, where we have Guy Cochran. Hello, Guy.
Hello, hello. Yeah, it's nice to be here up in the Northwest, and we got another buddy of mine here that's just down the road, not too far away, that you'll see here in just a second. And it's nice to be representing.
That's right. And that is Sky Gleason. Hello, Sky.
Good afternoon, good evening. Hello from beautiful downtown, Edmonds, Washington. But both Guy and I claim Seattle because who knows where Edmonds is, let alone where Marysville is. So,
well, similarly, I'm in Mount Barker, which is up in the Adelaide Hills.
Oh, but you mean next to the? Oh, yeah, I know what. Yeah, it's right across from the.
That's right.
Can you catch a bus, Sky, from Edmonds to Seattle? Is that the question? That's simply, if you can take a bus, then it's close.
Light rail is our new thing. We're very proud of it. It goes right past my house.
From Seattle out to you?
Yes. Well, as of this year, it'll go up to Everett at least. It's getting closer to Guy. Another year or so.
So Guy's in the outer suburbs, and you're just in the outer suburbs.
So outer is, yeah. Well, I'll let Guy speak for himself.
Yeah, they're not building up this way for a long time. I think Everett is where the train will stop. I know it's going to the airport, which will be cool. Go all the way to Painfield, which is.
It's doing a super detour. It's going up the I-5 corridor freeway, taking a hard left to go over to the Painfield, which is where Boeing makes airplanes, and then it'll come back out to the
downtown.
Everett. Yeah, right through downtown Everett. and then it'll go all the way down to the. We're very excited about our light rail. You'd think a city that had, the Space Needle back in 1964 with a really cool tram, and we're just now getting light rail. Yay, us.
All right. So if this is the first office hours video you're watching, you may wonder what it is.
We are all
that
about
we
public
discuss.
transport.
About public transport, probably weather, and two different cities and two different countries. No, we're all about media production questions and answering such. And what happens particularly on a morning is that it's really lots and lots of questions that people are asking. On this evening show, the extra hours, we tend to take a little bit of extra time. And one of the things is also that we are playing around with cloud production for this particular show. And so, Guy, I'm interested in some of the journey that we are now here with Mimo Live. There's been a bit of testing, and the headquarters for it is at your house, right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we've been using VisVector for the last year up in the cloud in AWS, and that cost a few bucks. So we have been paying for that service. I think a couple hundred, maybe like $300 or so a month have been our fees. And when you do the math, sometimes it's better to just buy your own hardware. It just depends on how much you're going to use it. So when when Oliver and I first started playing with this idea, we rented a machine in Mac Stadium, like the highest end one, just to see what it could do. And then we're like, well, after like 7 months, you could just buy it. So he bought one, and that machine pushes 8 Zoom bots into a meeting. And so that machine was here. And then recently we started doing some more testing, and then we're like, hey, could Extra Hours do Mimo Live? Integration with the Zoom native integration. So basically with Zoom now you're just able to pull the participants. So what we're doing right now, if I was to cut over, I'll probably go infinity if I do it. Yeah,
A little bit.
Infinity and
A
beyond.
little bit of infinity.
So yeah, that's the interface. Well, that's part of the interface of Mimo Live of what you're seeing of how this show is actually going. So that machine is sitting right here actually. It's a bit of a mess. I'll cut to it. That machine is right here. So we had set it up in After Hours to be able to show what it looks like, and I've just left it right here. It's going to get moved, but in order to show the display out, I hooked up a decimator and an ATEM, and so now I got all this craziness. And we're actually pushing this into After Hours as well. The live Mimo Live backend is pushed in. So hopefully that's something we could do going forward. So people that want to watch exactly how things are done behind the scenes, we'll start with just the interface, and eventually I'd love to also put the Zoom interface that you guys are seeing that are on the panel here, so you can see all the cuts that are about ready to be made, and you can see hopefully nobody picking their nose, but you'll be able to see what people are doing when they're not on the screen. So it's an interesting place. I don't know where else on the internet that you could find a place where you can watch a live show being cut, watch the behind the scenes, and eventually I'd love to hear the comms as well. Like that would be amazing. So you get a little taste of everything. And then hopefully that makes people want to join in. And then actually the ultimate is to be able to give people the ISO so that they could come in and cut the show, but they wouldn't be in this meeting. They wouldn't be able to interrupt us. They would just be able to extract out those feeds.
So one of the kind of stretch goals is to be able to have up to 16 panelists. And that was a test that happened on Sunday. Is that right?
Yeah. So Sundays aren't recorded in the regular office hours show, so we can't go back and listen to it. But for those that were there, they heard one of the requirements for being able to go from the big infrastructure. So the morning daily show has a lot of infrastructure. It's an ATEM Constellation, which is like a $12,000 switcher. And then it has, a Mac Mini R5 that are pushing Zoom ISO and a couple other things that they use to handle EIC type engineering work, audio and things like that, to be able to get into all that infrastructure, because there's a lot going on here. There's when a panelist raises their hand to answer a question, it builds a super source. So what was talked about on Sunday was, can Mimo Live when a panelist raises their hands, can it build a super source? So that's one of the challenges we have to do. The other challenge that was presented was, can it do 16 and 4K? So immediately we jumped in. We said, hey, we need 16 people jump into after hours, and 16 people jumped in, and we tested it, and it was beautiful. It works. And this machine here, that, just to be clear, what's going on here is this machine is a brand new machine that's the base level Mac Studio. So it's the M4 Max, fresh out of the box. We just installed Mimo Live on it. That's the only thing on this machine. And that's what you're seeing right now. We're in this machine. It's logged into Zoom, extracting the people out in 1080. But we did do 16 at 1080, and it handled it. So it's a cool thing. I mean, because, owning it versus having to rent it in the cloud. Well, I mean, I guess I'm in the cloud, because technically the cloud's just somebody else's hardware. So this is somebody else's hardware. I just have a fat pipe here. So I'm able to easily handle all of it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention before. It's like you're on the outskirts of town, but you can claim a 1 millisecond ping to Google and to, right? Yeah.
Yeah. When the installer for Ziply, it's the fastest internet in the nation. When he came by, he goes, you're getting a 0.9 millisecond ping. He said, I've never seen that before. 0.9 of a millisecond. So it's very fast compared to my Comcast. It's like 12 millisecond or something like that. So it can make the difference.
Isn't that bad?
Yeah, which isn't bad either. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not just the ping. Well, like 50 or 50, 60.
Is it that much?
It depends where you are. Yeah.
That could be a little dangerous for some of the stuff that we do with these cuts, where the pacing comes is crucial. It's just like, and hit the play out, especially when you're doing these simulives where you're trying to push in something that the cut is like within frames. So that those milliseconds start to matter. It's the difference between believable and not believable. It's like, okay, did that cut come in on time?
I think that's true if you're doing it for music, but if you're doing it for sport, I think sport's the other one where you need to be crucial. Anything outside of music or sport, though, you can be like half a second off. Music, you could actually sync it to the beat. So it would cut on the beat. So if you press it, so you can press it before the beat happens. So this is essentially just like a sequencer. You can change the pattern of the sequencer, but it doesn't take effect until it gets to the end of the bar, and then it changes. So you can preempt a cut in music. But sport's tricky. I think sport's the one that's a little bit harder to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of these simulives where it gets dangerous. Like you definitely sweat bullets when you're like, is it going to land just right? Because it's like, okay, you've got a live feed coming in, and then you've got a pre-record that it's a host that's live tossing back to a pre-record. So it's gotta feel natural. So some of these more and more, they're starting to become a thing. Like the new Zoom Webinars Plus has a new Simulive feature, which I haven't got to try out yet. Actually, that's a whole nother discussion. Have you seen that, Grant? The Webinars Plus?
No.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, there's some
a
Simulive
little bit
in there. Yeah, and there's Backstage now in Webinars Plus. So it's a new thing that just came out in the last month.
Still not in meetings is the thing, for me. But
yeah.
We want to see all the audience. That's a big thing for the events. We've got a couple of questions there, Guy. What's the first one there?
First one's coming in from our very own Sky Gleason here in Seattle. I'm editing video on Adobe Premiere on a 2019 MacBook Pro on Big Sur OS. What is safe to update Intel Core i9 chip to?
Carl?
So I've just done this myself. So Sequoia. So Sequoia is pretty much rock solid. Like, it's actually fixed some apps. So I had some third-party apps that were glitchy, or I had to like log out, log back into my profile to get them to work. When I've updated to Sequoia, all these apps are fixed. So I haven't found one glitch yet. So it's actually fixed a lot of problems that I've had with Intel-based Mac. So I'd say Sequoia. 26 is not going to work, I don't believe, on Intel. But yeah, Sequoia seems pretty rock solid now for Intel, which is really good.
Yeah. So just. It's a weird correction, but it is 26 will work on a 16-inch MacBook Pro. So it's a little bit unusual because they've actually split the models where at the same age, like a 2019 14-inch or whatever it was, 13 or 14, whatever it was back then, won't take Mac OS 26, but the 16-inch does, and the Mac Pro does, and so it's like you can see that it's on its final legs, and so you can install the latest one. And I have installed. I had the beta on it on my MacBook Air, and that was working fine. And because I think that in the past there was significant changes under the hood of the OS, and really I don't think they have done major changes for some time. And so it tends to just be, there's certain things around audio processing that seems to always be the case, like with Pro Tools or things like that are really slow to come around. But for most apps, I don't think it makes much of a difference at all. So if you're being super cautious, then yeah, you do Sequoia, which is a year old now. If you're going to go to the bother of it all, and the bother I mean is that I always like doing a fresh install, and that's a big. You can find people on both sides of that camp as to whether they want to install a fresh install or just keep upgrading the OS. But I always like doing a fresh install, and it kind of clears all that junk out. And there's a whole bunch of apps that you're not using anymore, and like it's worth doing. So. But Sky, I'll get your thoughts in a moment. But Guy, did you have more to?
Yeah, so I have that machine as well. I have a 2019 MacBook Pro, the one with 32 gigs of RAM, and it cost me an arm and a leg when it came out.
Me too.
I mean, and I was very proud of that machine. But the advice that I would give, an M4 Mac Mini at $499 runs circles around that machine. It is so fast. So for the money, I would just go to Costco, or actually it's on Amazon right now that they're $499 from Amazon themselves. And you could even do what I do, which is splash top into that Mac Mini from anywhere in the world. So you could be editing in Premiere while you're at the coffee shop with the huge storage, so you could have, like I have 64 terabytes of storage here hooked up to mine. So it's one of those things where you go, do I really want to carry around that ancient MacBook and editing proxies when I could have an M4 with full resolution? I would get the Mac Mini.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly the hope I was asking about, because I've kind of iterated, but I used to be locked in with the plugins and the specific hardware and software, things that you had to have, and once you changed your OS, the multiple ripple of things that would break. But what I'm doing now is mostly things that are in the cloud, so I do need that. But Guy, my film that I'm working on with the Graham Care project, I've got that one on the original when the Mac Minis went to an M, but I was not aware of the M4. So if I can match this laptop, which is a 16-inch with 64 gigs of RAM on the operating system, but now that you're telling me about the M4 for the $499, you are expensive friends in such a good way.
Yeah, I really like that workflow, Guy, that you just mentioned, because it was the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro was the last one that I bought at $6,000 Australian. So it was a big
mortgage.
Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, but when I went to replace that, I went to a Mac Studio. So then it was the M1, the first Mac Studio, which is what I'm on now. And I bought a MacBook Air, which was an M2 at the time, for the same price, right? So it was $4,000 for the Studio, $2,000 for the Air, and I've not looked back. That combination has been amazing. And the workflow that you just mentioned is exactly what I do, where I'll have Final Cut running on the Studio, and even when I'm in the house, I may just want to sit on the couch and do some editing. And I use Splashtop if I'm remote, but if I'm local, then I just use the screen share, because it's got that high performance mode as well that sends audio perfectly. It does a high frame rate. It's really good. And the thing I love about that workflow method is you do a whole bunch of things, and then you might do some processing or an export, and then I just close the laptop, because it's being done on the studio. And so even better than that is when I'm sitting at the beach with a Vision Pro on, and I've now got a widescreen of the Final Cut. I'm doing all the editing, same thing. I've now finished. I'm now doing an export. Take the Vision Pro off, and away it goes.
I think that's
So
actually Apple's intention is
cool.
for the Vision Pro is
Right.
to hook it up to to hook it up to Mac Mini to a Mac, to a studio or a Mac Pro if you want to do some high end stuff, and essentially it just becomes your screen. It becomes your KVM. I think you're right.
Yeah.
A very powerful KVM.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's a
be
good way to do it.
be gentle with me. I just got to try the Vision on like
Pro.
Friday of last week. And yes,
Okay.
I almost fell off the chair. They're very nice chairs in the Apple Store in Austin, Texas.
That's right. Yes.
But oh my word, the demos they take you on to begin with, and it was such an honor because I was there with a fellow geek from Nashville, Texas, and we got to sit next to each other. And he's a brother from another mother, and to go on that journey together. That was, I see that last week you were talking about the immersive experience, but that is that's a 3-pound adventure that you strap to your skull.
Yeah, it's fun. It's worth doing. I think it's about a 20-minute demo. Is that right, Sky? Is that what?
Yeah, it was. And
Yeah.
we had somebody sitting between us. Literally, it felt like you have to be this tall to enter this ride, or in this case, your head had to be that short or something, that there was some kind of limitation. But it was a 30-minute adventure that he walked us through at the same time. And it was, I mean, I've got the Oculus and we've played the virtual games, but this is productivity and this is imagination, and the simplicity of,
Yeah.
the magic
The interface.
fingertip
Yeah.
things they've got it figured out, man.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It'll be interesting to see where it goes in version 2, and what they do hardware wise and how they iterate, and whether the glasses, there's speculation as to whether glasses is going to take over, or whether it's, it's taking their attention at Apple, or, I don't know.
Well, I was
But
so
we'll
surprised with
see.
the audio as well. The audio was right
yeah.
there and present.
Yeah.
And then we were in the physical store, and occasionally somebody would walk past, but so you would still, it's a hybrid mental journey.
And it's still
Yep.
just a 1.0 hardware as well. So I know they've updated the software, but the hardware's still 1.0, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's an M2 in the processor in the headset, so it's not too bad. But just to finish up, Sky, on your question, and Oliver did mention, he said 20, Mac OS 26 is fine, and the same idea, change to an M4. But if you've got the M1, like that's a remoting into that. Is that a Mac Mini? Or
It is a Mac Mini.
M1?
It's also
Yeah.
across town at my director's house, but
Right.
we're getting our exercises in on getting this film done, and so
Right.
I could remote into it. But what
Yeah.
are you saying? What are you thinking?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah,
But
is
it is
the
also
M-
the OS on that was the original, so it's not
Yeah,
not
right.
Sequoia. So this is me needing to touch a lot of pieces of equipment and break things.
Yeah, if you're in the middle of a project, you may not want to do a major
It wouldn't
OS
wouldn't let
update.
me run Google, so it was like, what? So it's
Oh,
Chrome
okay.
Chrome broke something, so it's like, oh man, and I live on Google, so
Yeah, okay. So you do need to upgrade. Yeah. But speaking of the Vision Pro, the next question, Guy.
Got one in from Roz McNulty in Vancouver, BC, and she asked, do you think this could be a real AVP app or a hope to be a funded AVP app? And there's a link to IPX Digital.
Carl?
So IPX Digital, they make bespoke apps for clients. So they aren't making, so IPX are not making an app for themselves. What they are essentially, they're obviously just software engineers who are going to make an app for whatever you want. And they're now saying, hey, if you're a client of ours and you want to do a Vision Pro app for what they're showing here is aviation generally, so just be maintenance or learning how to fly, so simulation in aircraft, so flight training. There's a reason for this because within certain industries you have to do X amount of simulation before you're allowed onto certain hardware. It's just a requirement, and so this is one of the ways they could do it without paying for a very expensive large simulator, which takes up a whole room and all that. You can now, if the Apple Vision Pro can be signed off as a simulator that can be used for training hours, which is required in certain industries, then it can be done. And so essentially what they're saying is we can now create your training requirement applications for your industry, and they're showing aviation here, but it can be it can be in mining. So there could be a maintenance and mining of how to maintain machinery in mining, which is another big one because a lot of that's done remote. And the only time a person goes on site in mining is to do maintenance. But they're not essentially making app to sell to people. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, we can produce an app for your industry, for your particular application. You let us know what the requirements are and we'll do it in the background. So IBM has been doing this for over a decade now for iOS. So one of the largest enterprise app manufacturers is actually IBM, which is kind of interesting. It's one of the models they've chosen. And they did a big partnership. I don't think they're on stage, but they did do an announcement at one of the Apple events that IBM would be one of the biggest enterprise software developments for iOS. But it's a very similar thing.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. And Roscoe asks, if a client is dissatisfied because he or she doesn't like the results despite multiple attempts, how might you stay encouraged and possibly turn around the project? How might you guarantee compensation for the work done?
Carl?
So the first thing with the client is to maintain expectations. So either show them previous work you've done, or show them similar work you've done, and say like, this is what we can achieve with your budget in this time frame, and let them see the output. So be it the output like a client output or a consumer output from a previous work you've done. If you've never done a job like that before, then you're going to have to do one. You're going to have to get a test day in, and you're going to just grab some people and you're just going to do a test day because you have to show the client something. So I wouldn't ever try to sell a job you've never attempted before. And by attempt, I mean like, get it set up, run it for half an hour and pack it down. You don't have to run it for a whole day. Just, show that you can get all the pieces going and show all the connections working. But yeah, maintain expectations. And if you're ever at a point where you need to give a client choices, give them 2 or 3 that you can execute. Don't allow them to come up with scenarios that you will just have to figure out how to execute. Give them the choice. So give them the choice of what they want, but you need to give them the choices of 2 or 3 scenarios that you can or you have done before, have executed in the past. So that way, and that's what I mean by managing expectations, is you're managing your own expectations as well. So what have you been able to deliver within time frame, within budget in the past? And so there's kind of, you got to manage your own expectations of what you can deliver to the customer, and you need to also manage expectations of the customer to know what you can deliver within their time frame and budget. So, but give them choices, don't give them a blank slate, because a blank slate, they can get an eraser and rub out stuff at the last minute and add stuff. By giving them choices, then they can't really do that. And if they do want to change stuff, you give them 2 options of which they can change to. So always, essentially, everything's always in concrete. You're just telling them which concrete you want to choose. That's kind of the way you put it.
Sky?
Yes, second the vote for the management of expectations. The challenge, of course, is what was the pre-conversations that you've had, the pre, and to Carl's point, what examples and demonstrations do you have recorded with them? Because again, in the creative process, it is very subjective. And now with everybody being a producer because YouTube says so, Sony says so, Apple says so, I want people to have a great experience. So personally, I used to be an editor. I made a very good living, and you paid me to make all the choices in the switch in the changes. You paid me by the hour. Well, we've moved into a project-based concept, and that's harder when people want to be creative. You're giving them the opportunity to be creative, but they don't have the experience of what it takes to be creative and create something. So that's where, again, back to Carl's, what is the example that you have, what is how many the quantity or the weight of a thing that that you're trying to measure, and then at some point you may have to fire the client and just say, we will not be able to agree on this, and I will hand you back all of your materials, and that's a horrible feeling, and you don't want to do that. And again, I'm coming from it as an editor situation, and so this is some of the hard nose to the grindstone experiences I've had, because everybody is now a producer. So that's where you want to help them come alongside people as a guide on the side, and give them a good experience. That's going to be a lot of conversation.
Yeah, I know Roscoe, you added how many re-edits do they get, and so it's, specifically around that sort of project. I had an event a few years back where we had someone and we ran the event for them, and their expectations were totally unreasonable, like it was just in another world. And as we went through the event, do you know what I noticed is that the pressure of that formed cracks, even in our delivery, right? And so there was it was unnecessary pressure, which meant that we dropped the ball a couple of times, and then the relationship was just so bad, because there was just a mismatch of expectations. And in the end, I think the client had an idea of the budget in mind, that they wanted going into it, and we couldn't do it for that. And this is, the budget that we set. And so they, I think, probably reluctantly accepted the budget for the event. And then in the end, they were kind of keeping a checklist of all the things that we weren't doing right, or the balls that we dropped, or whatever it was along the way. And I think at the end, they were just trying to make a case to drop the overall price back to the budget that they initially had. And so, of course, in the end, we just had to agree to disagree, in the sense that this was not going to work. We took a hit on the payment for the project, and we walked away, never to take on that work again. And so we covered our costs, but we didn't make as much as we should have on that particular event. And I wonder if you are kind of you could be in a similar spot, where at some point you can be arguing that you need to be paying more for all these edits because you changed it. At the end, once you've made a decision that this is not a client that you want to continue with, then at some point you're just going to say, how do we get out of this as quickly as possible? And does that mean that they get extra edits and whatever, just so you can just be free of it? Well, yeah, that's what you do, right? You're like, this is totally unreasonable. We know that we're not going to continue, whether you're saying that then, in yourself, you're not going to continue with this client going forward. So how do I just wash my hands of this thing as quickly as possible? You've got to just, what's the shortcut, the shortest way to finishing this project? And it might be unreasonable. It might be a whole bit of extra work, but then you're done and you just know. So much, the opposite is true, right? Where you have these amazing clients that you love working with, that they pay you reasonably for the work you do, and you enjoy working with them, and it's just a great relationship. And so they're the ones that you focus on, and occasionally you come across these ones that it doesn't work, and I just think you don't want to drag these things out. Do you know, it's the thing it makes me think about is when what's the cost of you going after what you know is right? Like when people owe you money, whatever amount that might be, there is a cost to you for really going heavily after a client and then potentially even suing them. And you want to drag this on for 2 years? The cost to you personally is far greater often than the amount that you're going after. And so you set up your automations of reminders, sure, but at some point you're going to cut your losses, and you move on, and you know you're not going to take any more work from them, and it's fine, and you're better off. You're sleeping better because you're not worrying about a court appearance or something, because you're dragging it on. So there is something there about, let's just get this done. Maybe, and what do we learn from it? We learn about being more explicit about the expectations and clearly what they get, and what if they are not happy with edits, or what's the process for that. And now you have a better contract that you have signed in the first place. And that's what we learned from that event as well, was actually we did drop a few balls along the way, and we could have done some better preparation, and we could have had better conversations of matching those expectations. So it's a great question though, Roscoe. I hope it is not a current thing you're working on, if it's just a little bit hypothetical. Sky, on the last point.
So, yes, I found that working with professionals, often you are on a certain level, but we often will work with people that don't have experience and are hobbyists and consumers. And my joke means I charge them more because of, as Grant's point, the pain threshold is higher. And so it's almost hazard pay that you have to protect yourself with. And if they want to come along on that journey of the creative process, then they need to pay for it, but that may not be in their budget. So this is, yes, if you will find working with professionals as executives, very exciting, very fun. But I am curious, Grant, to your point, that you covered your costs. So you have a contract. That's process one. Thank you. And you maybe you can back behind the scenes, have a conversation with Grant, with Roscoe about that. B, what is the how do you process the different payment schedules? If you can share. Sorry, I may be poking. And what's your PIN number and your mother's maiden name?
No, you're exactly right. I think payment schedule is really key, because I particularly for projects that can drag out, you want to get money up front. You want to get some money up front, and whether it's half up front or some projects can justify being 100% up front. But I think getting some means that they've committed, and then at least you've got some. And ideally, it depends on what your costs are for the project. There's always labor, right? But if the actual costs that you have for your event, for your project, is covered by that 50%, which hopefully it is, your next 50% is all of your time, is all your labor. And worst case scenario, which I have had before on a project, is that I didn't get anything more other than the 50%, but I felt like all of my direct costs were covered, and it was just some time. And of course, your time is valuable. I totally get it, but if you're not actually out of pocket at the end of the day, that's a good place to be. So, yeah, I think that's part.
There is just to let you know. So most people know that my day job is a photographer. So none of my work really happens live. So I don't necessarily do too much live stuff. So if I do have a client who, let's say, a larger client, let's say, who wants to pay me in like 30 days after the event, I say, not a problem. You just won't receive the photos until you're fully paid, because that's one thing I can withhold until you're fully paid. Now, that's because I don't work live. Now, I know a lot of people in the office hours community do work live, so at the end of the event, your job is done. Maybe the records, those kind of things can go out. That's those kind of things that'll be after. And so maybe that is something you could do if you're in that environment where you're offering both a live solution and also VOD on the demand. And I would always 100%, if you're going to do a live where your job is being done on the day, then definitely, as Grant said, get 50% in, just so if something goes wrong, at least you've covered your costs, because you will have costs. and then you can withhold the VODs until the balance is paid. And any client will understand that's the way it works. So simply, yes, we'll give you a VOD, but you need the balance paid of your bill with us essentially. As a photographer, I get to do that quite a lot, but I never really have a problem with anyone paying me. I have a lot of repeat customers, and some people pay me like months ahead of time because they want to super glue that date in because they know I may get another job on that day. So a lot of people do know that if they pay me before the event, then that date is glued in 100%. And sometimes if someone hasn't paid me yet and I do get a job coming in on that same day, I'll say, hey, look, I've got another job on this day. Do you want to pay now to super glue it in? And they do, like within the afternoon, they'll just go, oh, yeah, here's the money. Because they don't want to have to, one, the hassle of finding another photographer, and two, the hassle of having to maybe reschedule if it is something that they needed me for. So that has happened as well. But yeah, if you can withhold work for the 100% or 50% of what's owing, then do that. And that'll tell that client that, you are a business and you do need to get paid. You're not just there to, do what they wish, and then hopefully you get paid by someone in the future.
I'm going to so steal that, super glue it in. That's brilliant. I think the phrase over here is lock it in, or pencil it in. Is it ink it? Yeah, well, ink it in.
Put it in ink. Roscoe was just saying, I'm not doing paying gigs right now, but I'm doing plenty of non-profit work. And it just reminds me of an axiom that I heard one time, and that was you do full paid gigs and you do free gigs. You don't do cheap gigs. And I find that because if your day rate was $2 grand and you're going to do for non-profit rate, you're doing a $200 job for them. In their mind, your client, they're paying you. Doesn't matter that it's, it's 10%. They're paying you $200. So they expect a whole bunch of work out of you. You feel the whole time like this is such a waste of time as far as money goes. It's not worth it. I'm not getting enough, whatever. Whereas when you flip it to free, that you're donating your time and that sort of thing, it totally changes the way that your client sees it. They're super appreciative, and you also see it in a different way, in a different light. This is something that I'm giving, and so it works so much better to be full paid or free, And I think
I do a couple of charity events a year for photography, and I use actually those events, and I don't charge at all, but I get an enormous amount of work from them because through the people that I'm working with, I get a lot of paid work, but I also get to experiment. So it's the one gig where I feel like I'm going to do the base, I'm going to give them what they expect, but then I'm going to do some crazy experimentation of what I can do with my equipment and what I can deliver. And I enjoy that, and they get some really creative stuff, which I will then put into my paid work once I've, ironed out all the kinks.
Yep, agreed. All right, next question.
Next one in is Zach Jeffers in the Great Pacific Northwest, and he asks, has anybody found a way to receive SRT on a Mac and output to NDI or SDI out via DeckLink? Just Mini Server, the Mac version of SRT Mini Server, doesn't seem quite up to speed yet, or is there an affordable multi-SRT decoder hardware option yet?
Guy, what do you think?
I haven't found one on the Mac that is like SRT Mini Server. I have tested the beta of just Mini Server on a Mac 4 M4 Mini, and it does not have the DeckLink outputs yet. So I have the PC version. So this is SRT Mini Server running on the PC, and you do have the SRT output option here. The reason why I would just say get a PC is because this is super stable. It works, and you could rent it by I think it's by the job or by the month. And so I would just go that route, because on the Mac, there's nothing that I found. I don't think anything exists. And I would not get an affordable SRT decoder. I got burned this last week on an event where we were using vMix in the cloud, and the SRT, we had it running pre-show, just like letting it come in, and all the sync and everything tested fine. And then when I went to cut to that, because the machine was now streaming, recording, and receiving SRT, it was a G4DN, I think it was a 4X, it just got overburned. And usually what I like to do is segment one machine for receive, one machine to cut, and one to stream. And this was doing all of that, and then another one to record. So that was doing the work of 4 computers. So when we cut to the live event, there were 17,000 people watching, and I cut, and the audio was out of sync. So luckily, had a back channel in engineering, and he saw what I was seeing, and we were able to repatch over to an NDI bridge machine, and that was our failover. And I can't stress enough having backups, because we were able to reroute things and punch it back in and rescue it. But man, it was a few minutes there of, watching the YouTube comments go by so fast that said the audio person should be fired. And I was just sitting there like,
Yeah,
oh my
wow.
God, like,
Ouch.
ouch. So I wouldn't mess around. So with the SRT mini server, you have things like NTP time server and SEI, the ability to bring in time code and lock things up. Whereas if you get a cheap device like a Zowie box or something like that, you could run into issues. There's a reason why a Haivision costs $10,000, and we were using a Magewell all-in-one encoder to send. And I don't know if it was the Magewell or the vMix, but it was nice to have an NDI bridge running on an MSO1 that bailed us out, because that was, I mean, it took me a day to recover. I think my adrenaline went up so hard, because it was just like nothing like that just, disappointing feeling of like you hit cut and you had tested everything too, and it was just like
Yeah, wow.
lesson learned.
Yeah, it's definitely worth separating out the tasks, isn't it? So that it is not working as hard.
Well, just to go back to the last question from him, this is that unrealistic expectation. What happened was this was a last minute event, and it was supposed to just be one camera, turned into 4 cameras, and then all of a sudden we needed all this stuff, and resources got deployed elsewhere, and it was like, all right, the engineering machine is now our backup vMix machine, and it was like, holy camole, like where did all this come from? But it was just the client at the last minute had unrealistic expectations, and we said we could do them, and it was frightening, but at the end of the day, they were super happy, because the way that we were able to use 4 cameras, I mean, it was an amazing event, and it was very special. The way that it actually kept going past, we went from 3 hours into a 4-hour show. I mean, that's how much overtime we hit, an extra hour. In fact, our Haivision encoders died, so we were two cameras in a theater and 2 cameras that were Haivision backpacks. And we went that long that the Haivisions actually needed battery swaps, which we weren't supposed to get to, like we had plenty. And then it was like
Wow.
an hour, like 3 hours, 45 minutes into the show, the Haivisions both died. It was like battery swap. And so we had to toss it back to the theater and ad lib. But I mean, it was great. That's part of the joy of live, it's just like, all right, what's going to happen? And, I'm sitting here at home operating stuff in the cloud, and it's amazing that what you could do with this technology, like control things from the other side of the country and have that many people watching. And I'm just here, this here in little town north of Seattle.
It's very cool. Very cool. Carl, would add to that.
So, as far as getting one in, if you want to do it like cheap, VLC will work on a Mac. It's pretty stable for one stream of SRT coming into a Mac, and then you can go out however you want out of the Mac. Out of that, you can use the deck link. But there is another way to do it, like via hardware. Now, this is more essentially you would be using that Mac like an appliance. You wouldn't be using it as Guy said. You're going to just use that one computer to do that one thing. The other way I would look at it would be using a data video. So this is the one with the 12G SDI out. There is a one that's half the price of this, which has HDMI out. They both do. It brings in one channel of, so essentially for $650, you can bring in one SRT stream and output it via HDMI for the half price, or you pay that price for the 12G SDI out. But that's an appliance. It can take in many more things than just obviously SRT. But yeah, so there is an appliance-based way of doing this as well, but it's going to be one per channel. The only hardware at the moment, well, unfortunately, so Blackmagic does have this solution, but it's only for Blackmagic products, which does include the Blackmagic app camera on the iPhone. Well, soon, is that you can send SRT straight from a Blackmagic camera straight to 2 of their switches so far, as that's 8 streams into one switcher. So that would be the HD8 ISO, which is currently already out, and the yet to be released Extreme G2. Extreme G2 and they both do the same thing. Extreme G2 has a little bit more stuff going on because it's got Thunderbolt, but they can receive 8 simultaneous SRT streams in HD. So it's not in 4K. What I showed you there can do 4K in HD, but it can only bring in SRT streams from Blackmagic devices. As I said, it could be the iPhone, but it also can be all their broadcast cameras. So it can't send in third-party SRT streams from like a Magewell encoder yet, and we don't think it ever will. It's meant to be just for the Blackmagic ecosystem. So if you want to be in the Blackmagic ecosystem, you can already do this with the HD8 ISO. Outside of that, then yeah, PC or actually hardware appliances from like Data Video or similar.
Guy?
So I actually have that data video. You want to be careful if you get one of those. It is only a caller device, even though I think of it as a decoder, as a receiver. A lot of people always try to keep their mind wrapped around it, go caller and listener, but there is something about opening up ports on which side, who can open them. So if you're using cellular or something, sometimes you can't open up that port. So be careful of your decoder being able to act as a listener and not just a caller, because sometimes you need to open up the port. Like if it's yeah, it just depends on what firewall you're behind as to who could open up. So with SRT mini server, one of the interesting things is that you could even do what's called a proxy. So you could even not give people your address, like you would give them this proxy address that would then turn and send it over to you. So there's this thing up at the top here that's called internet proxy mode, and then you would give them this, like in the USA it'd be this 209.151 address, and when I flip this on, I would give them these stream IDs, and that way, if this was something like a reporter that is a freelancer or something like that, and I don't want them having my IP address to mess up, another future feed, I could use proxy mode. So there's some benefits of using SRT mini server. There's a reason why it costs a lot of money. It's not cheap.
Fair enough. Next question.
Next one, Tony Mobley. What does the panel think of Sora 2?
Sky, have you got it?
Well, I just started looking at it because I'm deep into the what can AI do for me land, and from a creative processing point of view, it's a brand new, seems to be a brand new experience, and it kind of reminds me of as a child, I wanted to create things and entertain my family, and it feels kind of like that right now with all of the influencers that were given the previous experience with it, that tested some things, weeding through all of the hype. It does remind me of being at NAB or any conference, and they're doing a demo, and look, everything works, but it's because it's a very streamlined best case scenario for what that tool is going to do. So will it continue to grow and stretch and play? I think you should play with it. I think you should get in there and exercise it and find out what works best for you. And that's how I'm discovering new experiences in the different tools of AI. Is I will run just text through a Claude. I will run text through a ChatGPT. I'll run text through a Copilot, and it will come back with its different language models that it has been trained in, each of which have a different perspective and a value for me. And I cherry pick those experiences. I did a lot with Midjourney a couple months back to create a 30-second commercial that had 5 different 5-second clips in it. And it was quite hilarious and just stunning that each individual clip would have cost me, $20,000 in a live studio with an audience, with a cast and lighting and bathrooms and parking and food. But the concept that I could create an idea that had, does it look like AI? Embrace it. Don't try to fake it. Go ahead and embrace what it is. And that's where some of the demos that I was looking at just now, they are animated characters that we are already familiar with. But it tells the story, it continues on, does the lip sync for you. So I'd say run with it.
Yeah, so it's currently just available in the US and Canada. I was able to get access to it using an American account, iOS account. It's a fascinating case study of, like, if you search the App Store, particularly outside of the US, if you search for Sora, you'll find like 50 apps that are all called Sora AI generation. Like they're all just like, and they're all just rip-offs and trying to get people's money and whatever. So when I got it, I do have some invites. So I don't know if I have invites. So if first come first serve, okay, Sky's got one. I got 3 more. If you want, because I'm on ChatGPT. I'm on Pro, and so I think I got it included, and so that's why I have some invites. But I've been playing around, and the interesting thing is, I was just asking the kids, tell me, give me 2 different words, and so my son said playground and ketchup. And so I was like, all right, I'll make a ketchup. I said, I want a playground full of ketchup, made from ketchup, and that it explodes on the hour. And so then it just created this. They're all 10-second videos, right? And it's what I have found, it absolutely is AI slop, right? It's this new term of just like this low quality kind of AI created, material. What I have found is that I have really preferred the experience of looking at the content within a walled garden of AI content, that I just know everything I'm looking at is AI generated. Because what I find now on the other platforms is that I'm constantly, every video I look at, I'm like, is this AI? It's like this, is this, something's not quite right. And whereas now I just find I would love if all the other platforms just had the ability to turn off AI generated content, so that everything is real.
Or
I'm
just
not
have
sure
an
we'll
AI
ever get
feed.
to that.
Or just have the
Well,
opposite,
yeah,
have an
an
AI
AI
feed.
feed.
And I think they will.
Yeah.
If Sora 2 gets this so good, I think other
Yeah.
social networks will actually just go, okay, here's just a pure AI feed.
That's right. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I've just found that it has helped my brain. It's just like, and there's some hilarious ones. I do find myself. My wife was saying to me, she's just like, "What problem is it solving?" And it's it's hard. It's a hard case to make at the moment that it's solving problems for us. Yeah, you kind of, maybe you're making it's good for doing drafts or like testing ideas or those sorts of things, but mostly what it's used for is cheap jokes and that sort of thing. So
But you do understand on the back end,
pretty
it's
impressive.
solving a problem for them, though.
Oh.
Yeah, because
Oh,
enormously,
yeah.
because they can compare what the output is compared to something that they may, like stock footage or stock photography, that is they know is real, and like how close are these, and they can have their own little algorithm that compares stock footage they have access to their output and go, oh, let's make it closer, let's make it further, whatever they want to do. So as far as training, this is unbelievable.
It's
People,
pretty
as you said,
impressive. Yeah.
Ketchup Playground, that is not something you could just think of putting into a training model, but because people will say it, then that's a very crazy thing to train. But they'll take a look at it and go, okay, is the physics correct? Is the lighting correct? They're looking at all the other things, not just the ketchup and the playground.
Yeah, the other one was a giraffe on a hang glider, and that was pretty cool too. So
That's slightly more believable.
yeah, but if you're looking to just look at some content, iJustine is really going pretty heavy on it, and so she's done some really cool videos that she's pieced together of all these 10-second videos that she's pieced together that makes it pretty cool. I'm going to keep moving on because we're running out of time, but the next question there. Guy.
Dave Kaufman, Vancouver, BC asks, can you do a super source tonight on Mimo Live? How many can you combine?
Guy?
Yeah, so that looks like a super source right there. I don't know why we're missing Sky out of
we're missing
way.
Sky.
Come on, show us.
Come on.
Come on, you can do it. You can do it.
Come on.
I don't know
Oh,
why
no, we got
Sky's
Sky.
not in box.
There we go. I'm now disappeared.
Sky, come on, box
Oh,
3.
right.
You could do it.
No,
Oh, double sky.
Now I got
Yeah.
double
Oh.
sky. I can only handle one sky. Jeez.
There we
Box
go.
fort.
There
There we
we
go.
go.
I
Woo!
resemble
We
that
put-
remark.
We
There you
put
go.
we put Alexander on the spot. Then you did great. Here we go. We got the
So we
four.
did 16
four up.
over the weekend, and I have the image pulled up. It's actually in the after hours discussion. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy. The 16 up looks great, but I don't want to show this on the live show because some of the people weren't camera ready, and so I don't think they expected to be put on the public
Yeah.
internet. So we'll leave that one to just, you can go into the after hours discussion channel on Discord and the office hours Discord and see it for yourself. The link's in there, but I'm not going to put it on public. But 16 is what we pulled off, and it looks gorgeous.
Awesome. And Tony Mobley's kind of adding on to that. He's just saying it looks great. It's Mimo Live, and is there anything else? I mean, it's kind of Zoom, the Zoom plugin into Mimo Live. What else is there? I mean, it's the Mac, right, Guy?
I mean, where we're going to go eventually, well, I guess the ultimate's 4K HDR, at high frame rate. So, I mean, that's done in hardware. The big deal to me here is that we're doing something that we tried VisVector. It does a lot of things that I don't know if we in our community would use those powerful features that are more for sports, like layering and layering and layering, where you get in like 4 something MEs. And having a big hardware control surface to be able to roll back or instant replay for sports and things like that. So I get why Grass Valley and some of these Ross and these cost a lot of money. But to me, the magic here is that Oliver made something that runs on Apple Silicon, and Apple is a $1 trillion company, that just happened to hit it out of the park with these processors. So Oliver kind of walked into something. I mean, I've had Macs since '95, so I mean, to me, it's part of my identity almost. I love Macs, and to have them just be this powerful now for $499, that's what we were using before. That last week's show was on the $499 computer. So this one being $2,000, even though that sounds like a lot, when I got my power computing, my first real big beefy computer, it was $5,000, and that was in 1995 money, so, or 1990, I think that was 7. But yeah, it was still a lot of money. So to be able to do this, what we're doing for $2,000, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It's super impressive. So I'm excited to do more. Like once that Just mini server comes out, actually to use NDI, it's working right now. So you can open up SRT, just SRT server, and pipe those SRT feeds from there via NDI into Mimo Live, and you're off to the races. That's working right now, and it's free. You could test out Just mini server right now for free. He's got it open all the way till the end of this month.
So good. So good. All right. We move on to content recommendations. Carl, a documentary series?
So, essentially a documentary series.
Okay.
Well, now Frozen. That's interesting. That's
Oh,
all right.
you're back.
So, I'm back. So what I'm going to show, I'll bring it up here. So if I push that out there, it's called. Bring it up. Right there you are.
We're on the
So it's
edge of
called.
our seats.
Well, it's just my ATEM has decided just to not play, so it's frozen me there. If I do this,
Oh, yeah. Whoa.
I do that.
Oh,
I do that.
black screen
Let's see
of
what
death.
happens. Let's see what happens. I come back to me. I go back to it. No,
Alexander.
it doesn't want to do it. So it's called Branch Education.
This is not,
It's a
that's
YouTube.
not a Mimo Live fail right there.
No,
for
no,
everyone.
no. That's so. I had a glitch earlier before we started the show, and it looks like that glitch has just gone onto channel 2, not channel 1. So that's all right. So it's called Branch Education. It's YouTube. So it's just I can't show my second screen at the moment because the glitch I solved before has just prevented another glitch. That's all. So yeah, Branch Education. So they do 3D animation, but essentially what they do is they write very detailed scripts. So I don't mean scripts as in far as computer language. I mean scripts as in like what we're actually going to say, what the narrator is, what a professional narrator is actually going to say. And so they actually do show pretty much on most of their more common videos, they actually show their process of actually working and like saying that this particular video went through 23 drafts. And so they put that much thought into how to explain very complicated concepts and hardware sometimes to pretty much every level. And if you can follow along for the first 5 minutes, you should be able to follow along for the next 5 minutes, because they will get more detailed as they go on. And they do say, just pause here, take a look. They do expect that if you do need to take a look at their diagram to understand what's happening, just pause the video and then move on once you do understand it. But they're very interesting. They're very new. So they've only been around for about the last year. They're definitely not AI, I can tell you that much. This is one of the things I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at educational YouTubers who are going very hard into not doing AI stuff as far as, and where they shine. This branch education shines quite brightly for me at the moment, because they're saying this is what you can do if you don't use AI in this kind of, so they're using obviously animation, and they're doing a lot of script writing, so a lot of revisions of scripts, and bringing in, and actually saying which experts they bring in too. So they're bringing experts and they're actually giving the list of experts they bring in. So this is a way that reference books, well, they're still made today. Reference books are still made today, but physical reference books that were made that have maybe on a particular subject. So it can be on, let's say, trains. And they do these reference books on trains. They put in very high quality illustrative images and artwork. They put in a lot of text that's revisioned. And then they also bring in a lot of contributors to go through the book and say, change this, change that. And so this particular YouTube channel, Branch Education, looks like they're doing that same thing, bringing in multiple contributors, and by also spending a lot of time, and by having a team. So sometimes you do want to see if you can go at this one. You can start a project as a single person, but you do want to reach out to people and get feedback before you publish that video or publish whatever it is you're doing. And they're doing this. There's another, Kirkasat, it's another one from Germany who does this. They do high animation, high scripts. They've been around for quite a few years. But it's good to see there are other people coming into the field now, doing different kind of videos too on different topics. But they're really pushing this high collaboration with experts before they hit send, rather than getting feedback in the comments from experts saying this is wrong, this is wrong. So yeah, Branch Education.
Good one. Guy, what have you got?
Yeah, there's this gentleman, Matt Porwall is his name, and he has this video up that it just blew my mind how soft this light gets. His video is called Interview Lighting Setup, and it's a 6-foot by 6-foot softbox that he builds. And you can see as he starts to build this out, it's actually using a Westcott frame, but he's not using it the way that you would typically use one of these frames. He actually hangs it horizontally like this, and then he puts his light inside of this box that he builds up, and the light from this thing is just gorgeous. So I'm fascinated by this technique. I'm going to build something similar to this, and you can see how he's able to raise it up here from the center, and it's basically like a 6-foot by 6-foot giant softbox that is on a rolling stand that he can roll around and move and shape this light. And he's a different kind of a director of photography that I'm used to. Like, he didn't want to add a bunch of hair lights and whatnot. So the end look, by the time he's all done, I think he sits in it himself. It's hard to wrap this kind of light like this around his. It's super for those of you that know lighting. You just can't do that with a small light. So I really think everybody should watch this just to be able to see what's possible with a 6-foot by 6-foot and a little bit of ingenuity. I'll put a link to this one in chat too. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Sky, what have you got?
I'm sorry. I'm still ogling over, guys. Giant softbox. We live in Seattle, and that's referred to as God's softbox because it's cloudy all the time over around here. But the trick on that would have been a shower curtain. How do you get that big giant screen? Okay, but here's what I'm sharing. I put it in the chat as well. I'm reading again because it took me a while to get into the 130 years from now version of what is the world in AI and sentient beings. And this character, Bob, we follow, and how he turns into a multiple humans because he's been digitized. The author is Dennis E. Taylor. I'm listening to it on audio Audible, and I'm enjoying it a second time because, again, all of these facts and figures are great in the technology of what we're doing, but I just needed something to expand my imagination a little bit. And this is while I test Sora and test all of these tools and get stronger and better at it, this is kind of letting me think way down the hill here, way across the horizon. So that's a thing that you could do.
Good one. Well done. I think there's some good ones there. I will forego my content recommendation this week and have a good one next week. Thank you to all of the panelists, to each of you. Thank you. Thank you for the 30 or so people that were watching along. It was nice to have you with us and in the chat there. And thank you, a big special thank you to Alexander for actually switching and making it all happen, and Robert and Peter and Taylor, and of course Oliver as well, who has made it all possible with Mimo Live and staying up late to help it happen as well. So thank you, team, and join us again next week. We'll do it all again. All right, bye-bye.